So I thought I'd just dispel one thing here at the beginning. I haven't fallen into a pit over the last month or been thrown into a well. Had a number of people on the way in say, haven't seen you for a little while. So I've been up at St Joseph's or at Our Lady of Fatima at Peakhurst in the parishes that we serve there as well. I thought I should appear, show my face there as well for a little bit. So no being thrown into a well for me. But of course, in the first reading today, Jeremiah is thrown into a well. He's thrown into a well because it's kind of like, it was a way of disposing of him because he'd become too unpopular. He'd been prophesying the word of God, and sometimes when you're a prophet, you get to say good things, but most of the time, what a prophet has to do is actually remind people of who God is and of what it means to be faithful to God. And people don't always like that or appreciate it. And so on kind of like a trumped up sort of charge, Jeremiah is betrayed by some of the people that he had trusted, some of the people that he had confided in, been supported by. They've turned on him, and their anger is so great that they throw him into this empty well, and the expectation is that they will leave him there to die. I don't imagine you've been thrown into a well either, but I do think that most of us at one time or another can at least know something of what it's like to be disappointed by somebody else, even perhaps a feeling of being betrayed by somebody, of saying something unpopular and paying a price for that. The wells that we can find ourselves in are kind of many and varied. Places, of course, where we feel alone, where we feel abandoned, perhaps by the people that we feel that we're most supposed to look after us or care for us. Life can be very difficult and really hard sometimes. And as I said, while we might not have been physically thrown into a well, there are times in our lives of great difficulty, great suffering, great trial, and particularly perhaps we can resonate with Jeremiah's story if we feel in some way or another that it was just really unjust, that what happened to us shouldn't have happened, that it wasn't what God would have wanted. It seems a betrayal of God's goodness to us even. We might even think of being in the well as a metaphor for the human condition in some way, that all of us in one way or another are either hurt against or hurt, wounding or wounded, and we find ourselves cut off and isolated from one another, looking at the walls that surround us on every side. That is part of the human story. It is part of the human condition. And if that's all there was, Christianity would not be good news at all. It would be just a description of reality, but there would be no hope, nothing to offer here when we find ourselves in those moments. But we're given a clue about God's response to that situation in the second reading today, from the letter to the Hebrews. We're told that Jesus, for the joy that still lay in the future, went to the cross, disregarding the shame of it. If I was to translate that into Jeremiah's experience, I would say that Jesus, knowing the joy that still lay in the future, that he did not experience then and there, decided to join us in the well, that he went to the cross, that he entered into the human experience and condition of isolation, of woundedness, of betrayal, of feeling like we've been abandoned by those who loved us most. or who should have loved us most. Jesus went into the well. He didn't simply take on our human condition, but he entered into our experience of the estrangement caused by sin, of the isolation that happens either as a result of someone else's actions or our own, and in fact it's always a combination of the two. Jesus knows what it's like. He knows what it's like to feel what we've felt when we've had that experience of being in the bottom of the well. He knows what that's like from the inside, and he knows it to a depth that we can only imagine. That by entering into the mystery of the cross, Jesus doesn't simply, he's already taken on our human condition, he's become a human being like us, but at the cross he enters into our experience of isolation, of separation from God and from others. But there's such an important moment there too. We hear it in Jesus' words in the gospel today when he says, I've come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were blazing already. I've come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were blazing already. What's that fire? Well, the fire is the love of God, the love that burns in the heart of God for us, for you. He didn't simply leave us in the well. He comes to cast the fire of love upon the earth so that we might know that the love of God, which is a union with him, love always tends towards union. Love always is about drawing into union with another. And so when Jesus says that he's come to cast fire on the earth, he's saying, what I want is union with you. He's not going to leave us in the well. He doesn't leave us in our isolation, in our separation, in our loneliness. He comes to cast the fire of his love upon us, that we might know the very love of God. That word cast is a strong word. Jesus is saying there that it's like the word is like to hurl or to throw. So when he comes to hurl the love of God upon us, to throw it. It's not just it's not like a little puny kind of little, couple of twigs that are alight. When he says that he's come to cast fire upon the earth, it's a blaze. It's a forest fire. It's a burning, raging fire, the love of God. And to experience that is to actually be taken up out of the well. Sometimes our sense of being in the well, our physical circumstances don't change, but everything is different when we know that we are loved in the midst of that, when it's God loving us right in the midst of our suffering, of our pain, of our isolation, our loneliness. That we've been loved with this incredible fire, the passionate love of God for you and for me. In the letter to the Hebrews, remember I said it says that for the joy that still lay in the future. It's an allusion to the resurrection of Jesus. That the joy that lies in the future, Jesus goes to the cross. He'll be raised to new life. He'll be raised from the dead. He'll be reunited with the Father in a perfect communion of love, and he invites us to share in that love. He invites us to experience it for ourselves. It's not a tiny little couple of twigs that are alight. It's the furnace of God's love for you and for me that we're invited to discover and to experience. Here's the thing though. You notice that after Jesus shares this in the gospel, when he talks about the fire that he's come to cast on the earth and how great is his distress until it's been cast, he then says something very strange. something very paradoxical. The Prince of Peace says, "Do you suppose I've come to bring peace on the earth? No, I haven't, but division." What can that possibly mean? If love is about union, if love is about being one with each other, of course that's about peace. It's not just the absence of conflict between individuals or people. The peace that Jesus comes to bring is the perfect peace of a union of love. So what does it mean here that Jesus is saying, well, I haven't come to bring peace? How can that be so? It's because there is a response that lies with us. God has made us free to choose that love or to reject it. God's love is the love of union. It's the love of peace. It's the love that changes the world. It's what our world desperately needs. But we've got a decision about whether we'll say yes to that love or refuse it. Whether we will accept the love that pulls us out of the well, or whether we'll say for one reason or another, I'm going to stay here in my isolation, in my loneliness, in my rage, in my rejection. We've got a decision to make. And some people, this passage would suggest, some people say yes, and it's possible also for people to say no, and that's why there can be division in response to Jesus. Jesus wants each and every person to know the love that he has for them. He wants you to know that you don't have to stay in the well, that his love can raise you up out of whatever that well looks like for you. But we do have a decision about whether we want that or not, whether we'll say yes to it or no. It might seem crazy that we would say no, but there are all kinds of reasons, usually grounded in fear of what God might ask, fear of what we might have to let go of, fear of what it might take to really say yes and surrender. I just simply want to say to you this morning that the love is absolutely worth it. That there's nothing more beautiful, more powerful, more transformative, nothing greater than the love of God, the fire of his love. As we enter into the Mass, as we celebrate Eucharist together this morning, there's an invitation here before us, I think, given to us by the gospel. Will we allow ourselves to be drawn into the mystery of his love for us? Will we say yes to Jesus Christ, who comes to bring fire upon the earth? Will we say yes? We can say no, he leaves us free. But he invites us into the mystery of his love nonetheless, because we weren't made for the well. We were made for that fire of love that he gives to all people, that he offers to each and every person.